Welcome to the Patient Portal Telehealth Trends and Patient Support Strategy session. I'm Chris Liberti, Director of the PDS Healthcare IT Support and Managed Services business. Over the next 15 minutes, I'll provide a high-level overview of why is this topic relevant, review the definitions of a patient portal and telehealth technologies along with the vendors prominent in the industry, patient support strategies, and future trends. Let's begin with why this topic, patient support. What is that all about? For those of you familiar with PDS, you know we've been in business over 30 years and more than half of our clients are healthcare providers. Going back about 15 years ago, one of our clients approached us and asked if we could provide technical support for their patients accessing their information online via a patient portal, which in that case was Epic MyChart. That was very new at the time, and we agreed to a pilot, and the pilot was so successful, it ultimately launched into a PDS managed services offering that now spans over 30 clients nationally. The majority of this offering started with providing level 1 patient support, call, email, and chat for the Epic MyChart patient portal, as well as other portal platforms. The reason this is relevant for today is we have seen our patient support volume more than double in the past 6 months due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's based on more virtual visits, more people being remote, and the addition of telehealth and the requisite support services associated with the adoption of it. I mentioned our clients, and I wanted to make time to recognize that this is an ongoing multi-year collaborative partnership. And as their needs evolve along with the industry, PDS support needs have been with it. For those of you who follow the industry, you may be familiar with the buzzwords at the time of telehealth and telemedicine. And even up until recently, we were wondering why there was not adoption of these technologies because they were so prominent in the industry news and so much investment going into them. I included this McKinsey quote, but to sum it up, we really lacked two things. First, a compelling event to shift people's behavior both on the clinician, provider, and patient side, as well as reimbursement, because due to the pandemic, there's now been many reimbursement options for telehealth. There are just a few listed here. You can find more information on this, the link below the CDC website, but the bottom line is due to the reimbursement, there was rapid adoption, and therefore healthcare providers were on the verge of being overwhelmed with patients who then required assistance with accessing these technologies. Patient portal and telehealth technologies. Before we explore those, let's understand what is the definition of a patient portal. As I mentioned before, this goes back 15 years for PDS, so it is a mature technology, but adoption still isn't as high as it can and should be. This is actually from healthit.gov, and many of you have likely used a patient portal. And it's simply a way to access health information online securely 24/7. And many people use it to schedule appointments, check lab results, medications, etc. Here's a partial list of the market leaders for patient portal technologies. The top two, Epic and Cerner, are really the two sides of the enterprise acute care market for electronic health record and overall enterprise systems. And each of them actually have their own patient portal product within their suite of technologies. The two below, Symphony Care and MedHost, you could consider almost middleware, a third party that would overlay disparate EHR systems. For example, Health System A merges with or acquires Health System B. One has Epic, one has Cerner, or perhaps Meditech. You needed a single platform to be able to connect with multiple EHR systems. But what we're seeing happening in the market now is if a merger acquisition does take place, they do just standardize on an enterprise EHR, and these third-party portals are largely going away. I mentioned earlier telehealth, telemedicine, the buzzwords for years and lack of adoption. Just wanted to take a moment to show the definition again from healthit.gov. Telehealth is really any broad range of technology that enables health services, where telemedicine is specific to remote clinical services. So in summary, telehealth, picture that overarching broad scope of video, of the internet, of wireless, whatever it may be, where telemedicine is tied to a specific remote clinical service or use case. Like the portal vendor slide, I'm focusing on a handful of market leaders that we are seeing the most. With video, they were early to market for providing a video platform that integrated with Epic. They have a large install base. Many of our MyChart support clients are also using video for their telehealth platform. Zoom entered the market, had an IPO earlier this year, has seen tremendous growth for two reasons. One, they were offering the licenses for free at the start of the pandemic, and two, they also integrate with Epic. The other market leaders on this slide would be Amwell, formerly known as American Well, and Teladoc. And if you follow the news at all, you will see that there's a lot of investment and energy going into these telehealth companies with innovation and many more on the horizon. Well, we've discussed why this topic is relevant today, looked at what is a patient portal, what is telehealth, telemedicine, what's really driving the rapid adoption, which again, COVID-19 pandemic, many people working remote, and the reimbursement piece for now telehealth. How do you support patients when you stand up a video platform and you now have thousands trying to access it? And I'm now speaking from experience with our existing support clients, as well as the many conversations I've had over the past 6 months where healthcare providers launched telehealth and then were inundated with patients that needed tech support. Three options. Do you build it out internally? Do you buy a software product that includes support? Or do you partner with a vendor that specializes in patient support services? The first option being build. You're a healthcare provider, you've launched portal telehealth services, and you now have these patient calls coming in. You can hire or reallocate existing staff, which is a reality now with elective visits down, and maybe instead of furloughing or laying off staff, you can train them to now become patient support analysts. The three pros with that would be you would own the process and patient experience, the cost avoidance of not having to hire, and also the RFP, RFI process and vendor selection implementation, which can take months. Possible cons here is if you are hiring, there's the cost of the headcount, and if you don't already own a telephone or ticketing system, that's a significant investment as well. There's also, if you're building it from the ground up, lack of knowledge base and best practices, which you would need to create along the way. And some of these calls I'm on with healthcare providers, there's 25, 30 people because it spans so many different teams and departments. You have the clinical side of the business, CMIO, you have the IT group with the CIO, you have security, Office of Digital, community outreach, and the list goes on and on. So to try to, going back up to own with quotations, that's really why is who would own it internally. The second option would be purchasing a software product that includes support. And going back to the previous vendor slides, I just use a couple examples that I know bundle support with their offering. On the EHR side or portal would be Cerner. Telehealth would be Amwell, formerly known as American Well. The pros with going this route is it's just one contract and they own it: software, support, patient support. It's a single point of contact versus adding an additional vendor and or internal resources. And in the healthcare world, hospitals always try to do more with the vendors they have because it's very time consuming and complex to onboard a new vendor. So a single point of contact, if you're already working with Cerner or Amwell, you just have that single piece. And you're outsourcing your support. So you're getting it out of your organization so you can focus on your core business of patient care. And some of these cons I'll speak firsthand, having experienced some software companies. Software vendors are focused on selling software licenses and developing software. They're not in the support business. That's secondary for a software vendor. And even if you are partnering going this route, odds are good that the software vendor's using a third-party service desk organization anyway, and just putting their front end on it. You have lack of leverage for subpar support services or missed service level agreements because you're locked into a software contract, and it would be challenging to try to get out of that or rip and replace the product, or try to get the software vendor to cooperate with a third-party support company going that route. And then limited visibility into the different incident categories that are being experienced by the patients, trends, and metrics. Whereas going with a vendor that focuses in this area around service desk, they would have robust tools in that area. And the third option would be partnering with a vendor who specializes in patient support services, such as PDS, and there are many others out there. Several positives going this route: you have an established process, people, process, and tools specific to this use case of patient portal, telehealth, patient support. A large knowledge base and best practices built over many years. I showed the PDS client slide earlier. We have multitude of knowledge base articles in this space. Here's a really big one: consumption-based pricing. You're only paying for what you use based on the number of patient interactions per month, versus if you go the build route internally, you have that set cost basis for the headcount, for the ticketing system, for the telephone system, and all the infrastructure that goes into supporting that, where if the volume scales up or down any given month, your cost stays the same. So if you have a couple down months, your cost basis is still high. And the final point would tie into that: cost avoidance of not making those capital investments in a telephone ticketing system and infrastructure. Couple cons would be there would be a cost to outsource it to a third party versus keep it internal. And then you run the risk, as with any initiative involving an outside vendor, that vendor may not be qualified. And I will say that we've seen a lot of vendors enter this space where they were providing traditional contact center, support center services, but not working with patients, not dealing with these clinical types of technologies and support needs. Future trends: telehealth, it's here to stay. And when I saw this, Sage Growth Partner and Black Book market research, 25% of consumer respondents had used telehealth prior to COVID-19. I was surprised the number was that high. I would have guessed it would have been in the teens, because we've been watching this for years and adoption was low. Where now it's jumped up to 59% because people have shifted their way of thinking as far as engaging both provider to patient, patient to provider, with everyone being remote and now using technology tools and video along with the reimbursement process. One other note: 33% would consider changing providers who offer telehealth access. That will be a source of competitive advantage and differentiator in the market as we move through this for healthcare providers. So this is something that is here to stay. And once again, the second point: follow the money, and the money follows the trends. Going back a couple of decades to the birth of shifting to electronic health records, you had the government reimbursement, you had private investment, and meaningful use related initiatives. Similar thing here, where the investments pouring in and government is reimbursing it. We'll just see where policy goes after the election. Just to wrap up on telehealth, it's played a big role the past 6 months. We've seen it in our business. Again, the volume has doubled. People quickly added on telehealth because the technologies have been there. The continued innovation, integration with the EHR and the patient portal, and now adoption by both patients and healthcare providers, in my opinion, is really going to secure in the future and, dare I say, the new normal of healthcare delivery. And then this other piece, going over to the payer side, this could be a way to actually reduce cost as this new workflow takes hold and people become accustomed to virtual visits, video visits, et cetera. In conclusion, we've talked about what's really driving this market, the different technologies, why adoption has been really driven through reimbursement and a whole new way of doing things remotely. And healthcare providers recognize and must continue to evolve as the patient engagement process evolves as well. A couple of quick resources below. I referenced some through the presentation as far as the CDC and healthit.gov. There's the PDS link to our healthcare patient portal support website. And then a couple others I follow. They have the weekly or the daily email updates. HealthcareITnews.com and Becker's Hospital Review. If you sign up for those or visit the website, there's consistently information out there about patient engagement, the latest in the industry around telehealth trends. With that, I thank you, and please enjoy the rest of your day.